Hello, my name is Nick Deborah, and in this short video, I wanted to have kind of a closer look at a chart that I sort of stumbled across in a video from the New York Times. It was actually on their YouTube channel. And the story was basically about the number of missiles that the US has used so far in the war in Iran. And so the chart that we're looking at is from the video where they show the number of missiles that remain in inventory, which is these sort of red squares, and the number that have been used in this unit chart, showing for 4 different kinds of missiles, of course. And I didn't think it worked great for a couple of reasons. The first is that it's what's called a unit chart. And so basically, in this case, each square represents actually 100 missiles. And so it's a little bit tough to perceive quantities. You know, you got to kind of count squares and think, okay, each one is 10. So I mean, you can certainly do it, but it's a little bit more kind of cognitive effort. And for some reason, they decided to arrange the units in rows of 15. If you're actually to count these, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, not 10, 15, which again just makes it a little bit kind of tougher to perceive. And perhaps maybe if the missiles have been, or the missile types rather, have been sorted by shortage, we could see maybe which ones were perhaps in shortest supply, but they seem to be kind of listed in essentially random order. And also, of course, the remaining missiles are shown in red, which I guess you could kind of justify, but to me, it's more the ones that have been used are the problem. And red, of course, typically indicates a problem or kind of bad. And so, yeah, I think, you know, normally they produce great graphics. This one, I think, might have missed the mark a little bit. And it's also not really kind of clear what is sort of the job of this chart. I mean, the narrator in the video had to sort of tell us, like, what is the point of the chart? And actually, I discovered later that this chart was also in a printed story, and we could see in the printed story that, oh, okay, so really the main insight here, the job of the chart, is to communicate that the Iran war has forced the Pentagon to rush bombs and missiles, other hardware, to the Middle East from commands in Asia and Europe. The drawdowns have left those regional commands less ready to confront potential adversaries like Russia and China. And so if this is the job of the chart, then perhaps showing the fraction of the number of missiles that have been used, and the fraction that actually remain in inventory and stockpiles, might maybe communicate that message a little bit more clearly, perhaps something like this, like kind of a stacked bar chart. And so certainly to my eye anyways, this makes it much more obvious that we're basically showing a story about fractions of totals, right? Basically a large portion of the missiles that were in inventory have now been used in Iran. And I also sorted the missile types from the ones that have basically been most depleted at the top to the types that have been perhaps less depleted at the bottom. And of course, those dashed lines around the used missile segments really communicate that this is the problem, right? It's the fact that now there is basically a big gap in the stockpiles. And, you know, I chose a title that perhaps makes the message of the chart more clear, right? The US's global stockpiles of precision missiles are being depleted by the Iran war. Aha, okay, so if this person saw the chart, even without any narration around it, they would still know what the main kind of takeaway is. And I did show the actual count of missiles here, but really that's probably not that meaningful, I think, to most people. You know, whether it's 1,000 or 10,000 missiles in inventory, really it's the fractions, the portions that I think are going to concern most readers. And so I think really putting the numbers in there are probably optional. Now, again, coming back to that sort of main insight or job of the chart that you know, we want to communicate, well, if we want to show that essentially stockpiles are getting kind of dangerously low, especially in other regions like Europe and Asia, well, that's not really communicated very clearly by a chart like this. For example, for these types of missiles, you know, Patriots and Tomahawks, you know, it's like, it doesn't look that bad, right? Well, you know, we still have, what, 2/3 of these left, about 3/4 of these left. And so perhaps, you know, it might have been justified to do a bit more research to figure out, okay, well, at what point do these stockpile levels become really problematic, especially in other regions like Europe and Asia? And then if, you know, the reporters, the researchers were able to get that information to perhaps indicate in the chart, because now it really communicates that, you know, yeah, this is a huge problem, because if these levels ever get down to these red lines, it means that there are now critical shortages in other regions. And so I think a chart like this might, you know, perhaps be more impactful than the unit chart that we saw before. Now, one of the other things that I read in the article is that essentially these stockpiles take a long time to replenish, right? And so that's kind of another huge concern, is that if they are so low, it's going to take years for them to go back up again. And so maybe if the data were available, you could show sort of the past history of the stockpiles, showing, how much time it took to actually build up those stockpiles and how suddenly they've now depleted, right? And so it still shows that significant depletion, but that historical data suggests that maybe it's going to take a long time to bring those stockpile levels back up. If you would like to learn more about how to improve your own charts, I have now an on-demand version of my practical charts course. It's 6.5 hours of video, 42 lessons for a reasonable price, less than my live workshops. And if you use the coupon code, which is shown on the screen right now, you can get 25% off. All of this information is, of course, available on my website, practicalreporting.com. Thanks very much for watching.